Good morning. My name is Joanne Wong, and I am Director of Corporate Services at the Greater New England Minority Supplier Development Council. Thank you so much for taking the time to participate in today's How to Do Business with Fidelity Investments. Today, we have the team, Chris Kasai, Squad Lead within the Procurement Department, David Lent, Senior Manager of Supplier Diversity, and Kevin Simon, Senior Procurement Operations Specialist, who will provide an overview of the supplier diversity program and procurement process at Fidelity Investments. So just a few housekeeping items before we get started. We will be recording this session. The presentation shared by Fidelity Investments will be provided at the conclusion of the event. And as there are a large number of attendees, we would like to ask that everyone use the Q&A box to ask your questions and not the chat so that no questions are overlooked. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Chris, David, and Kevin.
All right. Well, hello. Thanks for having me here today. I'm thrilled to be here. As Joanne mentioned, I'm David Lunt. I'm the Senior Manager of Supplier Diversity for Fidelity. I've been with Fidelity for 17 years, and this is my 4th year in supplier diversity. So I'm hoping that this will be a valuable session for everyone that's attending, and hopefully you'll get out of it not just how to do business with Fidelity, but really with any Fortune 500 or really large company. So I realize it may be new. Some of the businesses here maybe haven't had that opportunity yet, or don't know exactly what a large company like Fidelity or what we would look for if you do engage us. So I'll give you a little bit of history about our supplier diversity program and kind of where we're at, what we do today. And then I'll hand it off to our other experts, Kevin and Chris, so they can go a little bit about what would happen once you do engage with us or if you're competing for a contract and kind of what we look for in a potential supplier. So as I mentioned, I've been here 4 years. So it's about, our program's a little over 4 years old officially, but we've actually measured our supplier diversity spend for well over a decade. So that's kind of the beginnings of our program, was just measuring, knowing where our spend was at, but not really being intentional at that point. So it's like, why did we create a supplier diversity program? Like, why do we formalize that? And there was quite a few reasons, but we recognize that there's a lot of benefits to using diverse owned businesses. And people always asking, like, what do you mean diverse owned? And I'll go over like what we track, but that's essentially, like the minority owned businesses, women owned. I'll give you a list of what we include in our program, but we recognize there's so many benefits. We get increased innovation, improved quality, sometimes lower costs. And I think one of our biggest ones is just a positive impact to the communities we're serving. That's huge. So, here at Fidelity, we believe that diversity gives us a competitive advantage, and therefore it's a business imperative for us. So let me go to my next slide, and I'll give you a few numbers of where we're at today. So I'm going to read the whole slide, but we currently do business with over 350 diverse owned businesses per year. And in 2021, we've spent $260 million with diverse tier 1 and tier 2 spends. So tier 1 being if we spend directly with the diverse business, that's the majority of that. And then tier 2 is some of our suppliers that maybe aren't diverse owned themselves, but we work with them on how they're spending their money, and are they spending their money with diverse owned businesses. So we have partnerships there. And then we have over 40 diverse partnerships with outside organizations. So that's like the Greater New England MSDC, WeBank, which is the Women's Business Enterprise Network, or NGLCC, Disability Ed. Quite a few partnerships that all help to what we're trying to accomplish, is help either get businesses certified or get diverse owned businesses more engaged. So I don't normally read off a slide, but I do want to read this quote from our Chief Financial Officer, Maggie Saravalli. She's all in on supplier diversity and diversity in general, and I really love this quote. But diversity drives innovation, period. Establishing both an inclusive workforce and supplier network go hand in hand to create value for our customers through a cross-cultural competency that can only come from diversity of thought and skill. In fact, we're meeting with Maggie today. Our supplier diversity team's meeting with her today to give her an update. So it goes in, our CEO gets regular updates. So from the top of our house on down, we're very focused on supplier diversity. So that just is great. It makes my job a little easier. So I mentioned who do we include in our program? What does that mean? Not every supplier diversity program is the same. So some may only track minority and women, some are broader, some include small business, some don't. So here's a list. I won't read them all off, but you can see the different types of diverse owned businesses that we include in our program. But one of the things I wanted to mention is that we focus on companies that are certified as diverse owned business. Now, this being a GNMSTC group, I'm hoping that most of y'all are already certified. You probably are. But what that means is that we want to make sure our dollars are going to the right businesses. If they're claiming to be minority owned, that they've actually been vetted and verified that they are minority owned. So we require a company to be certified by a recognized agency such as GNMSDC. So if you haven't yet become certified and you're thinking about it, I would definitely encourage you to reach out to this group, where you can contact me and I get you a little more information on where to go, how to get started. But with that, once you are certified, the next step, which you probably heard of or already done, is to register in our portal or portals of companies that you think there'd be a fit. I wouldn't go out and register for every portal you can find. Do a little research on the company to make sure it's a good fit for your business. But that said, we do procure, I feel like, just about everything. We're such a huge business. There's not much we don't purchase. There's a link here. You can jot it down if you want, but I'm happy to share this deck with Joanne if she wants to send it out later. So you'll have the link in there, but it's just the supplier.fidelity.com. You can go in there and register, and that will get you on our radar so that when we are looking for an opportunity or a business, we can go in there and see who's already registered as a diverse supplier, and it'll let you put in a little bit of your capabilities and tell us a little bit about you. So with that, I want to hand this over to Kevin so he can get a little bit deeper into the weeds of what the process looks like. Kevin?
Thanks, Dave. And we can go to the next slide. So just briefly, sort of introducing myself. So I work alongside with everybody else here. I work in Fidelity's procurement department. So I've been in procurement for about 6 years. What I do is I support our strategic sourcing efforts. So essentially RFPs that we sort of run as a company. So an RFP being a request for proposal, or any type of sourcing event that may be. The logistics of that are really going to be, again, there are many ways that vendors can sort of come into our ecosystem, and we sort of try to engage and get vendors in every sort of format that we can. But again, RFPs is a primary way that we do that, which is just a competitive strategy that we utilize. With that said, Ariba is our procure to pay system. So again, that just means that sort of when we send out RFPs, Ariba is going to be that tool that we utilize. Vendors do need to register. You do not need to be registered in the network to initially engage, but just sort of FYI, that is sort of part of the process. At some point, you would need to register. Again, when we say procure to pay, that just means that from the sourcing all the way down to the invoicing, that is the system that we use. In addition to that, Globality is another platform that we use. It's more of an AI-powered system that we utilize at this point. It is a new system that we've been rolling out. It is another format that we use, again, to engage in sort of these competitive strategies when we send things out for bids. About cycle time, I would tell you that an average RFP is going to last you about 2 weeks. So again, it does take some, again, participation and engagement from the vendors to do so, to engage in that process. Again, non-disclosure. So what we do promise, of course, our bidding process is going to be fully confidential to participants. So again, we want to ensure that confidentiality is covered for both parties. So an NDA is always going to be a part of the process before engagement in any of these processes when we sort of had discussions with vendors. contracting, red lines. Actually, before I go too far, I know there is sort of with our globality effort, there is sort of more information that we wanted to share. So I did want to give Chris just an opportunity to sort of chime in with some more of that globality piece.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. So just by way of introduction, Chris Kasai, I've been with Fidelity for about 17 years now, within the procurement division for almost 2 years, and leading up our supplier diversity task force, within our department. So yeah, I just want to emphasize, we are absolutely focused on, increasing the use of diverse suppliers and consistently looking at different tools and ways to do that. So as Kevin mentioned, we're recently onboarding the use of globality. The thought there is that'll give us access to 20,000 plus suppliers that are on the globality platform. It'll enable us to reach a larger network of diverse suppliers that are registered with globality. It'll also speed up our time frame, and just again provide us with additional opportunities to engage suppliers in our competitive bid process. So we're excited. It's still in the infancy stages, but we're looking forward and viewing it very much as a positive going forward.
Thanks, Chris. And really, sort of that speaks to, again, we have the way we sort of source things when we come to an RFP process is really about the type of engagement. As Dave mentioned earlier, we buy everything. There is really very few categories that we don't touch when we are out there sourcing and looking for vendors, especially looking for diverse vendors. So we are always looking in every sort of category that we can find that we spend money in. Globality versus Ariba really becomes more about what is the sort of size and scope of the type of project that we're engaging in. So again, that may be how you engage with Fidelity through those different platforms. I will go ahead and skip just for time purposes, and we'll go over to things for being considered. So this is really going to be more of a conversation about working with Fidelity. Again, more logistical pieces about that. You can read through that in your own time and probably send out this deck afterwards. But really about being considered. What will make you stand out as a vendor when you are coming in to participate, regardless of what other format is which you come to Fidelity. So again, it's always reviewing the opportunity in an RFP perspective. Review the opportunity in its entirety as soon as possible. Can't stress that enough. Ensure that you're understanding what the actual project is, what it is we're looking for. And then, of course, your ability to meet and exceed those technical and functional capabilities. That is truly what we're always looking for as well. Are you going to be able to sort of meet the requirements and, again, tailoring your responses to that? An RFP is always going to be specific to what it is that we're trying to buy. Again, always sort of try to stand out and sort of speak to your competitive advantage. But again, make sure you're focusing on what the actual goal and initiative is for that actual opportunity. And then, of course, experience and qualifications. Big part of this, and of course, about size and scope is, yes, Fidelity is a large firm, but we are always looking for opportunities for smaller firms, disruptors in sort of specific categories to make their footprint and come into our ecosystem as vendors. So the big question is always going to be, are you prepared to scale up as well? And then, of course, availability, experience, qualifications of your staff assigned. Can't stress it enough. Make sure you bring your A team whenever you're sort of participating in any sort of effort. Then, of course, competitive time and cost proposals, always going to be a big portion of sort of what we're looking for. And then a very big factor, and I cannot stress this one enough, ensure that you're maintaining the satisfaction after the actual RFP process. Because really this is more about an ongoing performance engagement. It's one thing to sort of come through the RFP process, understanding that usually in RFPs, one bidder is going to win. That's just going to be the reality of general RFPs. But if you do give the opportunity and you do win that RFP, just ensure that you're sort of what you've sort of stated in the sort of responses and your actual performance through sort of managing after that closes, that you're sort of bringing, again, putting your best foot forward as you're sort of engaging. That's going to open a lot more doors for you to sort of spread your wings and sort of have opportunities to reach more portions of the business potentially. And then, as Dave mentioned, get on the supplier list. That's always going to be a big thing, especially in the globality piece. As Chris mentioned before, we have 20K vendors that are already on that platform. It becomes a very good way for us, for vendors who are already in that platform, if we're sort of just going out looking for an engagement, to say who within those particular spaces already works in those particular spaces, and who can we engage early. And again, raising your hand, getting our supplier list, that's another way as well. As Dave mentioned before, we utilize that very much, sort of when someone within the firm comes to us and asks, hey, we're looking for a vendor who does X, Y, or Z. Do you know of anybody? We reference that quite often to look for vendors who are already registered with us, and who have raised their hand to ensure that we are looking for those next and great opportunities for them to participate. With that, I will stop and I will let Chris wanted to add some more pieces. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I would just add a couple of additional points and items. One of the things is we are constantly looking for ways to add additional vendors, right? So we don't want our process to get in the way or prevent us from enabling, a vendor, a diverse supplier to compete. So we are more than willing to look at ways to, modify our process to, help, mentor, figure out ways to, we understand vendors come in all sizes, right? And, your resources vary, widely across different industries. So we are open-minded, to figuring out ways to make sure that, again, you can compete and be included in our competitive events. For example, we're entertaining the idea of splitting up, different contracts, maybe giving a percentage, to a smaller vendor, as opposed to just awarding, the 100% of the agreement to one vendor. So there's different things that we're continually looking at, again, as ways to be inclusive to a wide variety of different vendors. The other thing I'd mention as we close out 2021 and we look at 2022 and beyond, as David and Kevin had mentioned, Fidelity is a big firm. We have a lot of different businesses. We're involved in a lot of different things. As you look at it from a category perspective, professional services, real estate, software, business services are just a few, that we will absolutely have, spend coming forward within the next year or two, and specifically around, software as a service, management consulting, security, training, education, building services, printing, etc. So there is a whole host of different, categories that we're going to need vendors to help support our businesses. So again, we're continually looking for ways to include more and more of you in our competitive process. With that, I think we might be done and open up the questions. Unless Dave or Kevin, you have anything to add?
No, thanks for going through that. Looking forward to some Q&A time.
Okay, thank you very much for that overview. So we do have a couple of questions that have come in already. So the first question is, you had mentioned that you're currently working with 350 diverse-owned businesses. What is the size of those diverse-owned businesses?
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of them are small businesses. It's not uncommon to have a business with just a couple employees. I think the majority of them are probably going to fall in the small, less than 20 employees, I would say. But we do have some. I've seen minority and women-owned businesses that have over 1,000 employees. We do have a few that are larger, but I would say the majority are small businesses.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then what RFPs tend to be reoccurring for services needed in the greater New England area?
Yeah, I'll take that. So as Chris alluded to, we buy everything, firm of this size. So I would tell you that realistically, professional services, software, the real estate spaces, those are where we spend a lot of our sort of monies. But we buy everything from coffee to, again, the actual construction of the facilities that we have our sort of people sitting in. So everything in between there we buy. So again, I would tell you that those three are probably going to make up a big portion again, but consider everything. There is no sort of category that we really don't touch. Again, with the obvious, we're not buying, defense weapons, but, everything else in between, we are sort of buying.
Okay, great. For staff augmentation, are you working with an MSP or multiple vendors?
Want me to take that one? And I guess from a staff, we are. The short answer is yes. So again, to Kevin and David's point, we're always looking for additional vendors to utilize. And obviously we like the competition yields, better results for us, both from a performance perspective and obviously cost. So yes, we're continually looking for additional vendors.
Perfect. What's the best way to get in front of specific decision makers around the IT services space at Fidelity?
Like that. Really the best way to get visibility with us is to register in the portal, which again, I'll have that link to send out if anyone wants it. Putting your capabilities in there, that will get you on our radar when we have an opportunity. Aside from that, you're welcome to send me a message. I will say we do get a lot of IT services out there, so there's going to be a lot of competition in that space. But with this portal is actually new, so if you go register, that'll give you a little bit of a extra visibility to our procurement team.
Thank you. Okay, so this company is a specialist firm, disability-owned company providing SOW contingent staffing with clients like AWS Cloud, etc. How would you recommend that they proceed with next steps?
Outside of getting on our supplier list, right, and us helping to onboard you, you can reach out to any one of us on this call, and then we can start the process, at least better engage and understand more details around what's being offered. When you talk about AWS and cloud, obviously that's a very hot topic these days, with most of the firms going migrating to the cloud. So we can absolutely, part of what our task force does, and everyone on this call, is trying to build those relationships, right, and make those introductions with the business units. So we can obviously help facilitate those discussions.
Thank you. Do you have a blanket contract for IT services with a large SI who takes care of all your IT needs, all as in all caps? Or do you put it out, or do you put out an RFP for IT projects?
We do not use.
The answer is.
Sorry, Kevin, go ahead.
What was that? Go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say we do not use only one IT firm.
No, I was going to say the same thing. We do not. IT makes up a big part of sort of what IT services is, a big portion of sort of our professional services and our sort of IT spend categories. So no, we do not have a blanket. So we do put those things out for RFP when they come, when the opportunities arise, for sure.
Thank you. So someone is asking, after they register in the vendor portal, how or where can they follow up?
Yeah, I can take that. It's a great question. So so definitely once you've registered, also feel free to send me an email. Just let me know that you've registered and who you are. We actually get we get an automated email that goes to the task force, which we haven't really covered. Chris alluded to that task force, but we have a group within our procurement organization, people from all the different areas of our procurement organization that has created a supplier diversity task force. So we meet regularly to see what opportunities are out there, but also what can we do to continue to drive this focus. But everyone on that task force gets a copy, an email when you register that shows the details of your registration, and everyone reviews that to see if there's something in their area where there's an opportunity. So if there's a current opportunity, that could already lead to us reaching out to you, but there may not be a current opportunity, and at least they're seeing it, so they might be familiar. But what if it's 6 months until an opportunity, and maybe by then they started to forget about that email they saw 6 months ago. So it doesn't hurt to follow up. You can send me an email. Again, I may not have a current opportunity for you, but feel free to stay in touch. Send me an email twice a year or whatever, 2-3 times a year, just to check in and see. That's a good way to stay on our radar. I would say probably don't message every week, but a few times a year is not a bad way to just keep yourself on our radar, and that way we'll be thinking about you if there is an opportunity.
Thank you. So someone's asking, what's the best way to find open RFPs or recurring RFPs, such as for beverages or IT training?
Yeah, so unfortunately, we do not have any sort of outward facing type of posting that shows any upcoming RFP opportunities. It is something that we're working on. But I would tell you, just like Dave answered before, the best way is to, again, stay engaged, reach out. You can reach out to any of us, you can reach out to Dave. All of us here are part of that supplier diversity task force that will make sure that any upcoming opportunities that do exist in those type of spaces that you are being considered, and of course, register as a supplier with us as well in our sort of diversity portal.
Thank you. Okay. This company is a women minority-owned business supporting major telecom and federal and state clients, along with Navy Federal Credit. Is there any open discussion forums that we can showcase our capabilities, especially in the areas of cloud and digital transformation in the near future?
I was going to say, I know with the timing of the year end, there's a little bit increased difficulty just with our increased volumes and the amount of year-end projects we have to get done. But we've absolutely talked internally about, we've done some, quote unquote, speed dating events where we've certainly, those have been beneficial to us. So we're looking for different types of venues to do that in early 2022.
Well, we offer virtual matchmaking as well. So if that's something you'd like to participate in, to reach out to me. Okay, so are there minimum insurance requirements needed as a prerequisite to being considered as a supplier?
Not that I'm aware of. I'm not sure, Kevin, if you've run into that.
There may be, again, that is more of a case-by-case sort of basis, and that sort of comes category by category. So that really comes into play more in the contracting piece. I apologize, I don't have that information in front of me right now, but yeah, it would be case by case. So I apologize. That's going to be the answer. It's not a great answer, but it's the answer.
Yeah, I've heard there are certain areas where I've heard of insurance requirements, but I don't know the specificities of that right now. But I would say it's probably not a common thing, but depending on what your service is, there could be a requirement.
And I will just add one last piece, and one last piece is that it has been a conversation. So we have been talking about internally about the sort of lower threshold of insurance requirements for smaller firms as well. Again, not trying to hold everybody to the same standard. Again, lowering that barrier.
Thank you. If you have a product or software that Fidelity would benefit from, how would you get to pitch your proposal?
So I feel like a lot of the answers are the same. I know we have a lot of the similar questions, but it kind of goes back to the way, getting on our radar, registering, following up with an email to one of us. So that's the other purpose of the portal. It's not just that we're proactively looking for someone to fit a need. You may have a solution that we're not aware of. I've had that before. Like someone mentioned telecom a minute ago, and someone had a very unique service within telecom who reached out. It was a veteran-owned business, and it was something I'd never heard of. That it was interesting. It had to do with renegotiating contracts, and it was interesting. So if you have something, that just go ahead and register. reach out to us. And like I said, everyone in our task force is seeing that. So if it's you're a task force member in our telecom category, they're going to see that, or whatever the category happens to be, and then you can follow up with us as well.
Thank you. Okay, are there any opportunities for a certified MBE and provider of commercial office furniture and interior exterior architectural products?
Absolutely. I think anybody can attest to this on this call, but from the Fidelity side. But yes, we have over 100 investor centers, and we have regional sites across the country, several of them, and globally. So again, those all need to be furnished. So yes, we do have a large need consistently for office furniture and that interior exterior architectural portion.
Great, thank you. We have built an innovative product to reduce wasteful expense of virtual machines. How would I reach the right person to discuss/demo our solution?
So I think that's kind of the same question we had a minute ago, so I don't want to repeat the answer. I think they probably heard that. Register, reach out to us. But I'm loving them. It sounds like there's some unique solutions out there, so that's why these sessions are great. Is like maybe you can bring something to us that we haven't heard before.
Okay, thank you. Are there any IT services that come to mind that you really need but haven't been able to fill easily? Just trying to get a sense of your hot IT needs.
I would say none of us on this call are specific to the IT space, but from what I'm hearing from my peers and colleagues, not necessarily. Again, I would just reiterate, similar to a lot of the industry, the migration to the cloud, individuals with cloud expertise, AWS, et cetera, is certainly a priority these days.
Okay, and this is our last question. So if you're out there and you have a question, please type it in now. But this is, what is the best way to get in front of decision makers for branded apparel and promotional products? Is purchasing centralized, or is it conducted by individual offices? And then there's a follow-up question: how much preferential consideration is given to companies that demonstrate they are using diverse suppliers in their RFQs, RFPs?
Happy to take that. I love the branded apparel because I feel like we've had a lot of wins in that space. A lot of it comes from, so we have internally, like a lot of large companies, we have employee resource groups, and they all have their own budgets, and there's regional groups, national groups, and they're always purchasing branded merchandise. And they're really good about thinking about diversity and how they spend their money, and they want to be intentional about that. So I actually have some going on right now. In fact, I would say if you're in that space, go ahead and send me a message, because there might be an opportunity for that. But yeah, as far as like the question about preferential treatment, well, that would probably get into scoring. And so I don't know if Kevin will have anything to add, but obviously we're focused on diversity. I mentioned at the beginning all the benefits that we recognize of using diverse vendors. So we're going to do that when we can. Ultimately, we're going to select, who is the best supplier, who best meets our needs, but we want to make sure we're including diverse suppliers. So whenever there's a competitive bid, we are proactively searching for a diverse, at least one, if not all. Like if we could have all diverse suppliers on that competitive bid, that's the best win. But we want to at least have one or two in every competitive bid. And then from there, to Kevin's earlier point, you have to bring your best foot forward and win that contract, but it certainly can be done. Kevin, I don't know if there's anything from a scoring standpoint that you might add.
Yeah, so we speak a lot about D&I, and this comes more into the E portion, the equity portion that we sort of miss a little bit. But yeah, we do sort of put those things into consideration. So responsible sourcing, again, which is what David's part of it, is about diversity amongst our supplier base. So, that comes into play as far as, again, boosting suppliers who respond to part of our RFP, RFX, RFI process, whatever have you. But more than that, it's things about accessibility, it's things about sustainability. These type of sort of initiatives are top of the house initiatives that sort of get passed down. These are very important initiatives. And diversity among our supplier base is one of those that is very important to us. So yes, we do give some preferential treatment in a sense, but it's more than that, right? Every RFP opportunity is very specific to the desires of what are the functional capabilities that can be provided by your firm in that effort. So those will also give in consideration. But again, we do want to make sure that we are looking for a proper and good fit, right? Companies and firms who are aligned with our initiatives around diversity and inclusion as well.
I would just add, I mean, like most firms, we also have a roadmap for the next several years. On that roadmap is obviously several different initiatives that we will be working on. One of which, to Kevin's point, is we are entertaining the idea of the scores, weighting the scores, depending on certain criteria and certain answers. So it is something that we're revisiting and looking at as part of the roadmap.
Perfect. So there is one last question, and I'm not sure that you would have the answer to this. So how many suppliers do you currently have for staff augmentation? And when is your next RFP?
Yeah, good questions. Yeah, I'd have to defer because I'm not sure I have the answers, for those right now. I would say, that there are, in general, our RFPs are continuous. So it's, throughout the year. We certainly don't have one part of the year where we have more, RFPs than another. So, which is a good thing. So it gives more opportunities to include, diverse suppliers throughout the year. So.
And I was kidding, there's one last question. So for companies that perform building services, how can we work with Fidelity? Are there property management groups we need to be part of first? Oh, okay, there's more. Okay. I'm going to stop saying it's the last question.
Again, to David's earlier point, if you could contact us, separately, we have specific squads that work on our real estate, and building services, and we could certainly, make that connection.
Okay. Does Fidelity have an in-house interior facility team that this company can contact to discuss facility-related services?
The short answer is yes. And again, not to be repetitive, but we could certainly, make the connection and share the information with our colleagues internally, and then, hopefully that'll lead to some consideration in, competitive bids that come up.
Okay, so that seems to be it for all of the questions. I want to thank everyone for taking the time to be here in today's How to Do Business with Fidelity Investments, and special thanks to Chris, David, and Kevin for being here and providing such a great background and information about supplier diversity and the procurement process at Fidelity. So with that, thank you again and have a wonderful day.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.